It's been a long time coming. A lot of you have been asking for it. So here it is. The Mega Man X series review. Here we go. In 1993, Capcom burst onto the Super Nintendo with the very first in a new kind of Mega Man game, Mega Man X. They really wanted a different feel to this entire series, so they started from the ground up, rebuilding everything all new. The year is 21XX, and a scientist named Dr. Kane has found the remnants of Dr. Thomas Light's lab. Inside, sealed in a diagnostic capsule, his final creation, Mega Man X. X was different from any other creation from Thomas Light because X had complete and total free will. He could think on his own, feel on his own, and go any which way with his life that he wanted. But because of the potential for danger involved, he was sealed in a diagnostic capsule to make sure there could be no potential harm. This series gave us so many milestones that were going to become staples in Mega Man X. First, an all-new cast of characters. Mega Man X himself, Zero. And an interesting fact about Zero, he was the original design for the new Mega Man, but the Capcom executives really wanted a closer similarity to the original series. So he got relegated to the sidekick or mentor role for Mega Man X. Amazingly, a lot of people think he's supposed to be the newer version of Proto Man, and it's easy to see why. The red armor, the yellow hair in place of the scarf, the fact that he appears in the first game, sort of to help out Mega Man, a lot like a Proto Man type character. This game also introduced us to series villains Vile and Sigma. The bosses were also completely new and different, as they were all based on different kinds of animal. It was a very different and bold move, but one that I really applaud. It was a very new style for the game, and it really did shake things up, but I think it worked very effectively, and the designs were so cool. Now, the story for these games is very much darker. After discovering Mega Man X, Dr. Kane created a new form of artificial life called Reploids. But at the same time, they started going maverick and wreaking havoc on society. So X joined a group who had called themselves the Maverick Hunters, who were basically relegated to stopping these outbreaks and trying to maintain the peace. Mega Man X also introduced a whole other slew of serious staples, mainly in the controls. Aside from your standard run and jump gameplay, there was also the wall jump, which allowed you to stick to the walls and jump off if you needed to. This was going to become a series staple and was very important for navigating a lot of the levels. In all of the Mega Man X games, you can find armor upgrade capsules, but in the first game, you had to find the leg parts to use your dash ability. In the rest of the series, it was there from the get-go. The armor upgrades not only changed the appearance of Mega Man X, they also gave him enhanced abilities. The helmet would let him headbutt through rocks, the arm pieces allowed him a more powerful Mega Buster, the legs gave him the dash ability, and the chest plate gave him higher resistance to damage. Mega Man X also had one of my favorite Easter eggs. If you could make it through the Jazz Armadillo stage from start to finish without taking any damage, and on the final train car, jump as it hits the height of its jump, off of it with a dash jump, you could land on this little platform above the boss door. And if you could do this a bunch of times in a row, you had to do it continuously. You couldn't take a hit any of the times through. Eventually, an armor capsule would show up there that had Dr. Light dressed as Ryu from Street Fighter in it. And you'd get the Hadouken. This move let you kill any boss with just one hit, but you couldn't use it unless your energy tanks, sub-tanks, and all of your weapon energy were completely full. Also new to this series was the stylings of the soundtrack. A lot more emphasis on heavy metal and rock sounds. It was really good music, and it's just great stuff even to this day. In 1996, Mega Man X was ported to the PC, and in 2005, PSP owners were treated to Mega Man Maverick Hunter X, a completely redone graphic overhaul with a new remix soundtrack. It was an excellent way to try the first game if you'd never played it before. For longtime fans, it was really nice to see how they'd upgraded the graphics and redone it. It was really, really cool game. Another awesome feature of it was that you could play through the entire game as Vile. In 1994, Capcom released Mega Man X2. In graphics and gameplay, this game was almost identical to the first one with new bosses, but it was the continuation of the story that was notable. This is a very story-driven series, which for an action platformer game is very, very different. In X2, Mavericks were still on the rampage, but it was discovered that they were being manufactured by being implanted with a Sigma chip. This also introduced a new kind of enemy, the X-Hunters, who were designed specifically to destroy Mega Man X and the Maverick hunting team. This game also introduced a segment that let you ride a speeder bike known as the Cheval. It was really cool and a lot of fun, and just kind of changed things up a little bit. Mega Man X3 came out on the Super Nintendo in 1995. Still very similar to the first two games in graphic style and gameplay, the story was still further continued. A Reploid scientist named Dr. Doppler had discovered that Mavericks were wreaking havoc because they were infected with the Sigma virus. This same doctor managed to find a cure for it, and the cured Reploids had started to create their own utopian city called Doppler Town. Unfortunately, they all started reverting to their Maverick ways, and it seemed that this time the ringleader was Dr. Doppler. So X and Zero were dispatched to take care of the problem once again. Some of the new features of this game were that you could for the first time play as Zero. It was in a very limited capacity. You could only call him in at certain points of the levels. In other words, he couldn't fight mid-bosses and he couldn't fight final bosses. And he only had one life bar. If he died at all when you were playing him, he was gone for the rest of the game. You could not bring him back. Also introduced were variant ride armors. The ride armor was a staple from the very first game, but there was pretty much only the one kind. In the third game, they started having ride armor chips that you could find, and this would let you go to certain platforms in the levels and call up whatever kind of ride armor you wanted. They became very important for getting to secret hidden items and secret pathways in some of the levels. In 1996, Mega Man X3 was ported to the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1, and ported is the correct word. The gameplay and graphics weren't changed at all. What it did feature, however, were anime cutscenes and an upgraded soundtrack. In 1997, this upgraded version of Mega Man X3 was also released on PC. 1997 was also the year that we saw the release of Mega Man X4 for the Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1. As much of a leap forward in graphics and sound as Mega Man X and 2 and 3 were on the Super NES, the Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1 releases of these games were amazing. The music was fantastic and the graphics were so beautiful. Capcom truly were the masters of 2D, and these games were such prime examples. This game also featured a series first, the ability to play as both Zero and X, and they each had their own separate storylines in this game. If you played through the game as X, you crossed paths regularly with a character named Duo, who was a kind of clumsy, somewhat hapless Maverick hunter, but he also hid a very sinister side. Zero, on the other hand, had a very incredible backstory. He'd been quite an enigma so far, but this game blew his backstory wide open. It turns out, and now, spoiler alert, I'm going to give you guys a spoiler alert right now because this game really did tell you everything about his background. Zero was originally created by Dr. Wily. Much like X, Zero was discovered sealed away in a capsule in an abandoned lab. When he was revived, however, by a series of X-Hunters, he killed every single one of them and continued to kill anyone that came in to fight him, until Sigma, who was at that time the leader of the Maverick Hunters, challenged him to single combat, one-on-one. During the course of that fight, the letter W began to glow in the crystal in the middle of Zero's helmet, and he doubled over as if in pain. Sigma smashed that crystal with his fist, deactivating Zero, but at the same time infecting himself with the Maverick virus. That's right, the Sigma virus was originally created by Dr. Wily. Now, Zero's storyline also has him crossing paths with a secondary character, and in this case it was a young lady named Iris, who became somewhat of a love interest. Unfortunately, a love interest that didn't have that much of a happy ending. The rest of the narrative centered around the fact that Kane Laboratories had requested a supplementary military force to help the Maverick Hunters. Repliforce was founded by General and Colonel, but upon review from Dr. Kane, he felt they weren't stable enough and they revolted. This resulted in them being labeled Mavericks. The Maverick Hunters then had no choice but to go to war with Repliforce. In 1998, Mega Man X4 was ported over to the PC.